You ever get conflicting advice on a big decision? One person tells you to just trust your gut, right? And then maybe an hour later, someone else says, hey, look before you leap. It's this classic tug of war we all feel, and today we're going to figure out how to win it.
Okay, so let's dive right into this dilemma. Because the real problem is, when the stakes are highest, the advice we get seems to pull us in completely opposite directions.
On one side, you have this whole camp telling you to be decisive, to lean into your intuition. But then on the other, you're being warned to be cautious, to analyze everything, to be deliberate. And it just leaves you kind of stuck, right when you need clarity the most.
So, what's the right answer? That is the million-dollar question. And over the next few minutes, we're going to build a clear framework to answer it, and it's all backed by some really fascinating science.
It turns out this whole dilemma isn't just about old sayings. It actually points to something fundamental about how our brains are wired. Psychology has this really powerful way of explaining it, and it's called dual process theory. So psychologists like Jonathan Evans and Keith Stanovich came up with this idea, and it basically suggests we don't just have one mind, we have two different types of thinking that are always working together, or, sometimes fighting each other.
Okay, now this is really cool. The big difference here isn't just about speed. I want you to look at that top row, the defining feature. Type 1 thinking is autonomous. It just happens, running on its own in the background. But type 2, that requires your active working memory. It's the heavy lifting, the conscious, focused effort. Let that sink in. One is automatic, and the other is deliberate, hard mental work. That's the game changer.
So here's the simplest way to think about it. Type 1 is your brain's autopilot, and Type 2 is you grabbing the controls and flying the plane yourself. That distinction is the key to pretty much everything we're going to talk about next.
Now, it's so easy to hear fast thinking and think it's sloppy or flawed, but that's a huge misconception. In fact, it's the secret weapon that experts use to make these brilliant decisions when everything's on the line.
See, the work of psychologist Gary Klein shows us that an expert's intuition isn't some wild guess. It's actually a highly structured process of pattern recognition that he calls the recognition-primed decision model, or RPD for short.
So here's how it works. First, their brain's autopilot, that's Type 1, instantly sifts through a massive internal library of past experiences, finds a match, and serves up a plan that's probably going to work. But, and this is the key part, that library isn't magic. It was built over years and years of practice. Then, they switch to manual control, Type 2, to quickly run a mental movie. Okay, if I do this, what happens? It's this beautiful, rapid dance between both systems.
And this really nails the point. As Klein himself says, expert intuition isn't just one thing. It's a blend. It's a super fast, intuitive pattern match, followed by a slower, conscious mental check. It's literally the best of both worlds, turning raw experience into real wisdom.
But that's an expert at their peak. What happens to the rest of us when the heat gets turned up? Well, that brings us to the great equalizer in decision-making, pressure. Stress has this really nasty habit of scrambling our brains right when we need them the most.
Here is a simple, powerful truth to just burn into your memory. The moment you feel that physical stress response, your heart's racing, your breathing gets shallow, your ability to think clearly starts to nosedive.
And this isn't just a hunch. It's a well-documented principle from psychology called the Yerkes-Dodson law. It perfectly describes the relationship between our stress level and how well we perform. So as you can see, a little bit of stress is actually a good thing. It gets us focused, it gets us energized, it pushes us right to our peak. But once you cross that optimal point, things go downhill, and they go downhill fast. Too much stress, and our brain power just tanks. It forces us into that rushed, flawed, reactive Type 1 thinking, precisely when we need our thoughtful, deliberate Type 2 brain to show up.
So, with all that in mind, how do we actually choose the right speed in the moment? Let's pull all these threads together into a super practical tool you can start using like today. The trick is to match your speed to the decision itself. You should absolutely move fast on choices that are easy to reverse, have a low downside if you're wrong, or where you'll learn a ton no matter what. But you have to slow down for the big ones, the irreversible, who am I type of decisions with a huge ripple effect. Honestly, most of our stress comes from getting these two mixed up. And here is maybe the most important insight of all. That urge you feel to just rush a big decision. It's usually not about getting a better result. It's an emotional move. We're just trying to escape the discomfort of having this big, uncertain choice hanging over our heads.
So from now on, before you make a move, just pause and ask yourself this one simple question. If your honest answer is to reduce anxiety, that's your alarm bell. That's your signal to slow down, take a breath, and let your type 2 brain get in the game. But if it's to increase clarity, then you know you're on the right track.
And that leads us to the final takeaway, a mantra to remember when you feel that pressure building. In the moments that truly matter, the goal isn't to be the fastest, it's to be the clearest. So the question is, in your next big decision, are you going to chase speed, or are you going to wait for the signal?